Hello and welcome to this presentation. We are going to see what is EMF, electromagnetic frequency radiation, especially something on 5G, and how to protect ourselves against that. So why should I care? Well, if you are living in a city or a town where you can receive and call through mobile phones, then you are in an intense field of EMF radiation. So we are better off knowing what EMF is and how to protect ourselves and then take action on that. So if you look at all kinds of disease outbreaks from the past, for the last 1 century, from 1918 flu outbreak to the current coronavirus fake outbreak, almost all these massive disease outbreaks happened in alignment with the new introduction of mobile technologies. I mean, radio wave technologies. So you can look it up. There are thousands of research works that clearly show the harmful effects of EMF on life, biology in general, but unfortunately, nobody seems to care. The focus is more on the commercial aspects of these technologies. Especially the government has very little care about how this radiation is bad for people. So the only option left for us is to empower ourselves with the knowledge of EMF and how to protect ourselves and then take care of ourselves and our families. Okay. Now what we are going to see here is what is ionizing and non-ionizing radiation very briefly. Then why 5G is so bad. The resonance at 24 gigahertz and 60 gigahertz, protecting against EMF, what are all the various methods by which we can protect ourselves and the references. So to gain a overall understanding of the entire electromagnetic frequency range, so 0 to about 20 kilohertz is our audible range, where uh, all the sounds are there. Then after that, up to 1.5 gigahertz is the radio frequency, radio waves. And these occupy the mobile phone frequency range. And then after that comes the microwaves and 5G radiation until about 100 gigahertz. And after that comes the infrared and the visible light and ultraviolet rays, then X-rays and gamma rays and so on. Okay, so this is the overall spectrum of EMF radiation range. So this 5G spectrum is also called millimeter waves, and you can see, I mean, the kilometers, meters, and then centimeters, millimeters, and so on. Okay. Now, basically, all EMF is bad for biological systems, and regular mobile networks operate at typically 500 megahertz to 2 gigahertz. Typically, 800 to 1 gigahertz is most of the operations happen. And then 4.5G and 5G frequencies operate at 2 to 100 gigahertz. So as the frequency increases, the amount of power and information we can put into these signals also increase, but the range decrease. The signals travel shorter and shorter distances. So we need multiple 5G towers to even cover an entire street with 5G capabilities. If there are trees around, they have to be cut because trees absorb this 5G radiation and usually they die out. So trees have to be cut, and also birds, if they are there around that 5G towers, they also die out. So what is the problem with 5G for especially human beings, especially the two specific frequencies? One is at 24 gigahertz and another one is at 60 gigahertz. So the x-axis shows the frequency in logarithmic scale, and the y-axis shows the attenuation, the power loss, basically how much decibels per kilometer the power is lost. This is also logarithmic scale, essentially exponential scale, right? At 24, you can see a spike over here. At that particular frequency, the water molecules absorb the energy from the radiated signal, and then they vibrate or increase their temperatures and act very differently inside our bodies. And then at 60 gigahertz also there is a massive absorption of energy by the oxygen molecules. And when this happens, because of the radiation, our body loses its ability to process oxygen in an effective manner, and it won't be able to uh, complete its metabolic function of generating energy through this the red blood cells carrying oxygen and burning energy. So at these two frequencies, we have severe problem to biology. Because of this, there are a lot of problems that comes. So the sleeplessness, inability to concentrate, dizziness, you always feel dizzy, and then you always feel tired, fatigued, and then tinnitus. You will have a ringing sound constantly in your head. So when the radiation becomes more, the ringing also increases and decreases accordingly. So many people have this tinnitus. I also have this now and then. So whenever I go into a high radiation area, the ringing in the air increases quite a bit. And depression is also another very common sign of EMF radiation. Okay. Now, this industry standard FCC talks about SAR, specific absorption rate. So this is the thermal effect produced on the biological forms. So the standard is 1.6 watts per kg of weight. If more energy is absorbed than 1.6 watts, it is of concern. So this is the FCC standard. Okay. Uh, and all mobile phones, the modern day mobile phones, abide by this FCC SAR values. But these guidelines are outdated, at least by 15 years. During the last couple of decades, the mobile technology and the power being used by these mobiles have exponentially gone up, but the guidelines have not been changed. And also, the SAR accounts only for the thermal effects, how much of heat is induced in our body. It does not account for any biological effects such as the ones which we saw earlier, the depression, any kind of disease, and so on. And there are absolutely no industry-funded research for the long-term effects of the EMF. There were some research done quite a long time back, but nothing of recent. And especially with 5G, there is no industry-funded safety studies at all. This has been agreed by the industry bodies in the United States. What do you say? Political structures. Okay, so how do we measure the radiation? It is measured in multiple ways. One is millivolts per meter. It's very commonly measured. Um, it is measured by acoustimeters. For mobile phones, typically 250 millivolts per meter is the maximum safety limit. However, if you are inside a city, typically you will experience anywhere between 500 millivolts per meter, and then sometimes it goes all the way up to 6 volts per meter, which is exceptionally high. Mobile phones, laptops, Wi-Fi routers, mixie, fridge, grinder. So any kind of electrical item, they produce EMF when they operate. So I'm going a little fast because we have a few things to cover. So in general, we have two measurements. One is the millivolts per meter. The other one is the milligauss. So this measures the electromagnetic effect, and this is more of a electrical effect. So we need to be cognizant of these numbers. 100 to 650 millivolts per meter is pretty much the upper limit of millivolts per meter, beyond which there is a high risk of serious health effects on our bodies. And then milligauss, if it goes over 5, then we have a serious problem, high risk of serious health effects. Okay, so these are like standard guidelines which have been put out. But even people say that these numbers are high. Okay, now let us see how much of radiation we experience during our normal day-to-day things, right? So if I play a mobile video on YouTube, it is putting out about 48 milligauss, whereas the safety limit is just 5 milligauss. So these are the measurements I have taken at home. I have this meter with me, milligauss meter, as well as the millivolts per meter measuring meter. So these are the readings I have taken. Your reading may vary. but this is the kind of representative numbers I can say. And I just put it on top of the fridge, and there it is showing 160 milligauss of value. Note that as the distance increases, these radiation values exponentially decrease. Okay, so um, if you just move away 1 feet, this 160 milligauss may reduce to just to 4 or 5 milligauss because of the distance. Okay, so this I just wanted to show how much of source radiation these things emit. So if I put inside the freezer, there is 224 milligauss of radiation. And when your mixie is running, if you're near the mixie, then you will experience about 360 milligauss. Okay, you can see that over here. Now, if your grinder is running, then it is about 537 milligauss. Okay, so you should keep away from these things. So if you want to measure the ambient radiation, okay, so I just put the meter out in the balcony, uh, and it is showing about 1824 millivolts per meter, which is 1.8 volts per meter, whereas 250 millivolts per meter is the safety limit, right? So if this is the ambient radiation in which we keep on living, which is 5 times more than the regular the top limit of the safety, then you can imagine what kind of problems we are going to face. Especially in my house, there are two large mobile towers, and both of them have been recently upgraded to 5G. They directly hit our house, so that is one of the reasons why this is so high. Okay, so there are so much of research have already been done on this. So here is one combined list of studies where 1670 peer-reviewed scientific papers have been listed, which shows electromagnetic fields and biology or health, how it affects health. Okay, and here is another one. Again, it takes a lot of studies together and list out all the health effects, bad effects of wireless radiation. And yeah, this is of interesting one, neurological effects of non-ionizing electromagnetic fields. Here, out of the all the papers which have been summarized in this particular publication, about 72% say that there are adverse effects on biology. Only 28% of the papers state that there are some kind of effect is there, but it is not very significant. Okay, here itself as a meta figure, you can see that non-ionizing radiation is bad. In general, there is a perception, I mean, it is generally said that ionizing radiation is really bad. X-rays and nuclear radiation, those are real bad because it ionizes content, atmosphere and air and so on. So they are supposed to be very bad, and now non-ionizing is considered to be much less harmful, but that is not really the case. And here, this is a really excellent research that covers a large amount of area and time. So this is the distance from a mobile base station. A mobile base station is nothing but a mobile tower which you see outside. 0 to 100 meters from the mobile tower, within that radius, there are about 3,569 cancer deaths that happen. And 100 to 200 meters, 1,400, 200 to 300 meters, about 975, and so on and so forth. So as the distance increases, you can see lesser and lesser number of deaths due to cancer. Okay, so just within about 500 meters, we are looking at 6,724 deaths happening, which is a big number. And beyond 1,000 meter, which is 1 kilometer, you have just 147 deaths. Of course, this does not mean that it is the radiation which is causing these cancers and which is causing the cancer deaths. It does not mean that. It is not proven to be causative. However, this is a very strong correlation which we cannot ignore. Okay, you can see the graph, how it reduces the cancer rates, mortality rates per 10,000 reduces as the distance increases. So despite the lack of research for safety, there are 4G and 5G technologies are being deployed across the world in a very rapid pace. As you know, Wuhan was the first city which was covered by 5G, towers, about 10,000 towers got deployed. You know what happened in Wuhan. And then same with many Italian cities, which were covered with 5G towers. And during this lockdown, installation of the 5G towers have been going on at a very rapid pace across many schools in the United States and Europe, and even in India also. Because of the bad effects of 5G, Switzerland has completely banned 5G in their country, and over 48 cities and counties in the United States have also decided not to roll out 5G. Okay, so this is in India. A friend has shared this with me in Facebook. These kind of towers have been going up across many cities in India. This is in Delhi. This is a typical 5G tower, and typically there's a camera on the top. And this is a much larger 5G tower installed on top of your school. You can see the amount, how big the antennas are and how much of radiation this thing can emit. And this is a base station tower, which is much bigger, and it's much taller. I mean, I'm putting this out so that you can identify these towers when you see one. Okay, so that's a very brief overview of what EMF is and why 5G is harmful. Now let us quickly go through how do you protect against this electromagnetic frequency radiation. The first golden rule is keep the distance. So the radiation reduces with the square of the distance. So if you are moving away by 2, then the radiation reduces by 4, the square of it. Okay, so keep all the devices which emit EMF radiation away from your body. Even if you just move it by 1 inch, the radiation decreases quite a bit. All mobile manuals clearly state not to keep the device next to skin, and this is taken from iPhone manual. It clearly says carry iPhone at least 10 millimeter away from your body to ensure exposure levels remain at 1 or below the as tested levels. Okay, so this is the golden rule. Never keep the mobile phone very close to your body. Okay, here this graph shows you how much of radiation that comes out of a mobile phone. So here you can see at the standby level is very low. So the y-axis is the volt per meter, millivolt per meter basically, and volt per meter as it goes up. So here it's very little, and when the mobile starts ringing, when it starts receiving the call, it drastically jumps up. Okay, it drastically jumps up. Just by 1 or 2 volts, it jumps about 20 to 30 volts, right? Nearly, yeah, 20 to 30 volts. Now, when you actually speak, it varies quite wildly, but still it goes very high. This is 45 volts and 50, 60 volt, I mean 60 volts per meter. This is at the mobile phone. Even if you just keep it away, you will not experience so much of radiation. And then when you're just listening to the call, when somebody is talking, this is the radiation level, and it keeps spiking up and down. And then at the end of the call, it comes down, and then the call gets over. Okay, so as you can see, it's these are like massive spikes. We are talking about from 1 volt to about 70, 80 volts per meter. Okay, so this should tell you how much of radiation we will experience if we put the mobile phone directly on our ears. So this slide shows you the harmful effects of these mobile signals for children. Okay, children and smaller adults absorb more radiation than larger adults. So this has been extremely well researched because the amount of heat and the penetration of the signal into our skulls and face remains the same, irrespective of who is holding it. Because the children have smaller faces, and young people have still smaller faces, their faces get affected much more. The signal penetrates a lot more into their face. So here you can see for an adult, it is not even half the face is covered. The signal penetrates only this much. But for a child, it is the same area, but the face is smaller. So the signal penetrates into a large portion of their brain. And this causes a lot of problems, right? You have the possibilities of brain tumors coming in, mentally getting affected, the child mentally getting affected, and so on and so forth. And not only that, if you put your mobile phone in the pockets, it's clearly shown that the radiation affects the reproductive organs, okay, and especially your bone marrow. So bone marrow plays a very important role for your immune system. If bone marrow becomes inactive or it becomes weakened, then your entire body's immune system becomes weak. So all kind of issues come up again. Okay, so here is another experiment, detailed study done where the experimental studies find mobile phone exposed to human sperm are more damaged than controls. Okay, you can see that the control has about 80% vital sperm count, and when after exposure, it drastically reduces to about 30%. Okay, you can go through this data. It's pretty bad, basically. So how do you protect against it? You can, the best protection against mobile is to use a conductive metal cover, this kind of fabric, conductive fabric is available. You can put it on the backside so that when you talk, it doesn't affect you that much. Okay, but depending on how you're receiving the signal, what is the direction of the mobile, this may affect your signal reception. You just have to move around the mobile a little bit and then you will get the reception. So there are small round things which like a button that they sell in the market. I am not sure how effective that can be. It may reduce the radiation close to that particular button, but I don't think it can really protect anyone against full radiation coming out of the mobile. So second thing is reduce the Wi-Fi signal strength. If you have Wi-Fi router at home, then you should reduce that. And all the modern Wi-Fi routers have options to reduce the radiating power from the router. You can control it via the software. So you can request your service provider to configure it for you so that the amount of power coming out of the Wi-Fi router is limited only to the extent of how you use it. So typically it goes about 50 feet from where the router is. You may not need that much. So if you're just going to use the Wi-Fi in the living room and not anywhere else, you can reduce the signal strength drastically. Okay. So software-based power reduction is only a guidance for the router. The router may still go ahead and spike the value under certain conditions, which is still it's a problem. So that's why I have put up like this. Aluminium is a very effective barrier for EMF. So I just wrapped around my router a few aluminium foil. This aluminium foil is a normal food aluminium foil which you can get anywhere. Okay, so I just wrapped it up and it reduced the distance by at least 4x. Meaning I was able to use it only in our living room. If I just go out a little bit away from the room, I won't be able to I won't be getting any signal. Okay, and if you put aluminium wrapper around you, then that forms a Faraday cage, and that will protect you from 90% of the EMF which is there around you. Okay, so here is one person who has put up his entire room. He has covered his entire room with aluminum foil. This is very, very effective and very, very low cost. Only thing is it looks ugly and people may not like the look and feel of this kind of room. Okay. So another way is that you can stick up these aluminum tapes. You can buy them in any hardware stores and just to put it on underneath or on top of these kind of Venetian blinds, so that it reflects away the radiation. So this is also a good idea. Many people have actually done it. Or you can buy aluminum plates and and use it as a Venetian blind instead of plastic. That is also quite effective. Even better, if you can buy this EMF fabric. These are made with the silver and copper threads. Okay, so these are now available. You can buy it from Amazon. They're quite effective in protecting against EMF. Typically, they will protect you up to 2 gigahertz and sometimes even a little bit more because as the frequency increases, its wavelength decrease, right? So when it gets into a millimeter range, which is the 5G range, then these fabrics find it difficult to protect you because of the threading, which may have more than half mm or 1 mm gap. So it's not very effective. But no, for normal EMF, they are very good. So basically, the holes in the fabric must be smaller than the wavelength of the signal you are trying to protect against. Okay. Denser material is needed to protect against the 5G. So the best option for 5G protection is to have a solid wall of protection, a sheet, aluminum sheet or copper sheet or silver sheet if you get one. We can use all of any of those to protect against 5G. Typically, the thickness usually doesn't matter because it's about the reflection, right? The waves get reflected. But lower frequency EMF, which is just above the audible range, they are very difficult to protect against. You need much thicker protection against that. Okay, so you can put up concrete blocks and so on. So this is how the EMF fabric looks like. It's at home. I use it to cover the window because we are living in a ridiculously high EMF field. But this fabric is very expensive. Just 3 feet by 4 feet costs about 3,000 rupees. So I just have one piece. I put it in a place where it is most effective. So this is silver plus copper threaded. It's again available in Amazon. And you can also buy just copper threaded fabric. This is also good, but it is also equally expensive. So here you can see that if I put the meter, millivolts per meter on my laptop, it is emitting about 1.4 volts per meter. Okay, and if I put a fabric in between, then the radiation drastically reduces to 98. Okay, so it's 1/14th of the radiation. So these fabrics are pretty good. So another option is to create a EMF-free zone in your house. You can put out this kind of aluminum coated curtains around for windows, and these fabrics are also now available. These are all conductive materials and very thin, washable. You can buy these and put it just around your bed, so that during the night you are protected from EMF. So when you actually sleep in a EMF protected environment, you can literally feel the depth of sleep. The sleep is much richer, and when you wake up, you feel very, very rested. So the most important part when you are protecting your house or a single room with these EMF protection measures is that you should not use any radiation devices inside the EMF protected room. Okay, because the radiation gets reflected off the protection, and then they get trapped inside the room, and this will cause you even more harm than when you don't have any protection at all. So you have to be very careful. If you protect your bedroom, then never take the mobile phone into your bedroom. Another important point is that when you are using an EMF fabric or EMF shield, it must be grounded, because the incoming signal induce lot of eddy currents and other things onto this fabric, the conductive surfaces. You have to drain that charge out. Okay, you can find these clips, and then these clips or grounding cables are also available, or you can just use a wire. Just keep it on one side and put the other side and put it into the grounding plug. So, but this is this outlet grounding is not a very effective grounding. You should the ideal way of grounding is to bury a 1-foot iron rod into the solid ground, into the actual mud ground. Okay, and then connect it via a thick copper wire to the fabric. That is the way you should actually ground. Okay, if you are living in an apartment like me where that is not practical, then you can use this regular grounding pin. Another way is to use EMF paint. So these paints are acrylic paints. They have carbon material and they are typically water soluble. They are now available. You can buy them. They are little expensive, but they are available. So you can use it as a primer coat. I mean, just after the cement, you can put it, and then you can paint the normal distemper or paint over on top of that. Okay. So more number of coats you do, better protection you will get. And again, this must be properly grounded as well. Okay. So that's it for EMF protection for houses and rooms. Let us look at the smart meter radiation. So if you have a smart meter, then it emits a whole, I mean, it emits a lot of radiation. So to mitigate that, you have a couple of options. One is to switch over to analog meter, the one which is in the leftmost part. This is a volt analog meter. It's pretty good. It's in fact more accurate than these smart meters. There are a lot of issues with smart meters. People say that it is not really measuring the electricity usage properly. And anyway, so from a radiation point of view, smart meters are very bad. So to protect against that, you can either put a Faraday cage around it, which is nothing but a metal mesh. You can put it around that and keep it away. Install this away from your normal living areas as much as possible. Or you can put a aluminum sheet in front of it, right? Stick the aluminum sheet in a wooden plank and then put the plank uh, uh, in front of this meter. Then apart from these smart meters, the regular electricity supply we use at home, they generate a lot of high frequency radiation. So more the number of gadgets we use at home, the more dirty electricity that gets generated. So there are a couple of solutions available. They are called Stetzer filters, and there are other names to this. They actually stop this high frequency radiation coming out of these electrical lines. It's called a dirty electricity. So typically you will need about 20 filters for a typical home. It is expensive, um, but it does clean up a whole lot of these dirty electricity problems. And if possible, switch over to DC power for lighting. It can drastically reduce this dirty electricity. And the trees do produce, I mean, they do significantly reduce the radiation reaching you. So if you grow trees around your house, then they will protect you quite well. They do not reduce the radiation because they do reduce the radiation because of the water content inside the trees, and the thicker they are, the better it is. Okay, so grow trees and plants around your living area and move away from concrete jungles. And yeah, so your concrete do not protect you against EMF. They may reduce it a little bit, but they do not protect you at all. That you have to keep in mind. So there are a few other methods by which you can protect yourself, but these are like very, what do you say, esoteric and not yet fully verified as far as I have explored them. They are called organ energy devices. There are many types of organ devices, but the basic principle is to use some kind of epoxy resin or polyester resin and put crystals and metal shavings into the resin. And when the resin hardens, it clings around these crystals and metal shavings, thereby producing some kind of energy field around, which is supposed to produce benevolent effects around that area. They say that the one I have shown here, I have made it at home. They are called tower busters. They contain the copper, aluminium, and steel, bronze. So four metals I have put, and in the middle you can see copper spring kind of a structure, and there are many pieces of quartz crystal inside. So it is said that if you go and throw this one near a mobile tower, they neutralize the bad effects of the radiation coming out of the mobile tower. Okay, there are again crystals such as black tourmaline, shungite, aventurine. they're all said to be protective against EMF, but I have not come across any definitive proof for any of these. So you can also explore these things. Search about Wilhelm Reich, earth pipes, tower busters, stressors filters, as I was saying. Okay, so that is it for today. You can explore these references. So all the points I have said earlier, they are all given in these references. And these are some of the previous live streams I have done. Go and take a look at it if it piques your interest. So thank you very much for listening.